Hey there guys, and welcome to another episode of Smash JT. I've had a few new subscribers since my last episode, and I have a lot of that to thank for the new Zelda. A lot of people are liking my videos that I'm doing for that, so if you're new for the Zelda videos or for other random videos, just a quick thank you for subscribing. Now, a lot of you guys are loving my top 10 videos, and I like making them, so I'm going to do another one here. This is the top 10 Nintendo 64 games ever created. You cannot argue with this list. It is a fact. Okay, just kidding. It's actually, you're probably going to disagree with everything that I do here, but these are my favorite Nintendo 64 games, and the Nintendo 64 is probably my favorite system ever created. I'm working on a complete collection, and I have over 200 of the games already, so I'd like to think I know a thing or two about the library. Anyways, without further ado, here are my top 10 Nintendo 64 games ever created. For number 10, I'm going to go with The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. This game was really good for the time, but a lot of people missed out on it because it came out towards the end of the Nintendo 64's life cycle. It was a lot different than the very first one, and people who played it were expecting something similar and were severely disappointed. But if you play this game in its own right and give it a chance, you'll absolutely love it. Majora's Mask on the Nintendo 64 was released in the year 2000, and it was very unique in the Zelda series. The game included a 3-day time system, 72 hours in total, and it was one of the few games where Ganon does not play a role whatsoever. While the game uses the same engine and many of the art resources are reused from Ocarina of Time, the game itself has a completely different story and plays very differently. And that rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way back in the day. For number 9 on my list, I'm going with Banjo Kazooie, made by Rare. A lot of the games I'm going to be naming on this list are going to be made by Rare. In its heyday, Rare was one of the best game companies ever made. They were a subsidiary of Nintendo at the time before they got sold off to Microsoft, and the Nintendo 64 is where they really shined. Released in 1998, from a distance, this game looks just like any other 3D platformer collect-a-thon where you just go around collecting, in this case, puzzle pieces. But when you take a closer look, it's a lot more detailed. The environments are rich with color, the gameplay is spot on with the controls, and the camera works really well with this game. I also enjoyed the storyline a lot, chasing after Grunty the Witch. Number 8 on my list is going to be 1080 Snowboarding. This game was revolutionary at the time, and totally changed the entire sports landscape when it came out. I didn't even really know what snowboarding was. It was right when it was getting popular, and I picked this game up and played it with my buddy, and we were blown away by the action, the speed, the tricks, the insane amount of stuff you could do in this. Also released in 1998, developed by Nintendo, 1080 Snowboarding had trick modes and race modes and a number of different courses to go down, and all in all, it was an amazing experience for the time. One of the few games back in the day that actually showed a true sense of speed when you're heading down the mountain fast. For number 7 on my list, I'm going with Star Fox 64. I'm not the biggest fan of flying games, but Star Fox was completely different than what I was used to, and while it was okay for the Super Nintendo, a lot of people really liked that. It really wasn't my cup of tea, but then Star Fox 64 came around and totally changed my mind. It made me actually like the Star Fox for the Super Nintendo a lot more. Released in 1997, Star Fox 64 introduced full spoken dialogue, fully three-dimensional graphics, new vehicles and characters. Game came bundled with a rumble pack, force feedback attachment, which was really revolutionary for the time. Star Fox 64 is also the true beginning of the Star Fox canon, and is one of the most popular games in the series. It introduced the multiplayer mode, including free-for-all battles that were a lot of fun. Alright, for number 6, I'm going with Super Smash Bros., the original. This game was awesome for the time, but it definitely shows a little bit of age when you play it now compared to the newer ones. But for its time, this was one of the best fighting games ever created. Now, keeping in mind, Nintendo is heavily protective of their IP characters, it was truly a unique experience for them to go through and make this game. The game released in 1999 and included 12 playable characters and 4 non-playable characters, and it gave fans the opportunity to play as iconic video game characters against another and fight each other in 4-player battles, in an environment where without this game that would never happen. For number 5 on my list, I'm going with another Rare game, Conkers Bad Fur Day. If you haven't played this one yet, make sure you do yourself a favor and pick it up. This was one of the best third-person action platformer games I have ever played, and that's saying a lot because I've played a lot of them. Although visually similar to Rare's family-oriented Nintendo 64 games such as Banjo Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64, Conkers Bad Fur was designed for mature audiences and features graphic violence, alcohol, and tobacco use, along with profanity, vulgar humor, and pop culture references throughout the game. This was really Nintendo stepping out on a ledge and taking a chance, because before this, they stuck to the family-friendly environment games, but this game was a step in a different direction for them, and it worked out really well. And more fascinating than anything is that the cart still sells on eBay consistently for over $100, just for the loose cart. And we're at number 4 on the list, and that means Mario Kart 64, one of the best racing multiplayer experiences you will ever have. Changes from the original Mario Kart include the move to polygon-based true 3D computer graphics for track design, and the inclusion of 4-player support. Players take control of characters from the Mario universe who race around a variety of tracks with items that can either harm opponents or aid the user. The move to the 3-dimensional graphics allowed for the track features not possible from the original game's Mode 7 graphics, such as changes in elevation, bridges, and walls and pits. However, the characters and items remain 2D pre-rendered sprites. And Mario Kart 64 to this day still stands as my favorite Mario Kart game ever made. Now we're really getting down to the nitty-gritty of the top 3 Nintendo 64 games ever created, and I'm sure you guys are going to be pissed at me for this, but Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is my 3rd best Nintendo 64 game ever created, and there's a lot of reasons for that I'm going to go into. Ocarina of Time was released on the Nintendo 64 in November of 1998, and for its time it was one of the most massive overworlds and games with dungeons ever created. The game was released on a 256 megabit cartridge, the largest capacity cartridge Nintendo had ever produced. Ocarina of Time's gameplay introduced features such as the target lock system and context-sensitive buttons that have since become common in 3D adventure games. As of 2017, it was the highest rated game on Metacritic with a score of 99 out of a possible 100 points. So I guess you could say the consensus is it's a pretty damn good game. And number 2 on my list for the top 10 Nintendo 64 games ever created is Super Mario 64, a game that debuted when the system came out, and it still holds up today as one of the best 3D platformers ever made. The game has left a lasting impression on 3D game design, particularly notable for its use of the dynamic camera system and its implementation of a 360-degree analog control. I actually lost count on how many things this game broke new ground on. It was incredible the jump they made from the Super Nintendo to the Nintendo 64 and made the dynamic camera system actually control perfectly the first time through. It's games like this that shows how much better Nintendo is at making games than the rest of the industry, and how far ahead of them they are technologically. Alright, how we doing, guys? We're down to the number 1 Nintendo 64 game ever created. But before I get to that, I definitely want to go through some honorable mentions. Very first one I want to talk about is Donkey Kong 64. When this game came out, it actually required the memory expansion pack and was sold alongside with it. Interesting side note for that, there was actually a glitch that would break the game, and Rare found out when they used the expanded memory, it wouldn't break the game would actually still work. And instead of trying to figure out why that was happening, they just bundled the expansion pack and required it for the game at that point. Another awesome honorable mention, Perfect Dark, another game made by Rare. You're sensing a pattern here. This game was the spiritual successor to Goldeneye, and it was an amazing experience for the time. The graphics were incredible, and the storyline was really cool. If you haven't played this for some reason, definitely check this one out. A few other honorable mentions I want to go through real quick. Wave Race 64, you guys are probably familiar with this one, but it was a really good 2-player action racing game going through on water sports, which was really revolutionary for the time. Nothing like this really had been done before, so definitely check this one out if you haven't already. And one of my personal favorites just outside of my top 10 is Pilot Wing 64. This game was fun for its accurate controls and slow pace. Parts of this game were almost like a meditative experience where it was just so relaxing to play, but it was a lot of fun. There's like 100 honorable mentions that I want to list here, but I'm just going to go with my last one, which is NBA Hang Time. One of the best 4-player party games you can do if you get a group together. It's like having an arcade at your house, and it's a lot of fun. It one-ups what NBA Jam did for the Super Nintendo with better graphics, more action, and faster pace. It's a lot of fun. Now we're at the number 1 game ever created for the Nintendo 64, and there's a good reason why this is my number 1 game, and I'm sure you agree with me. Superman 64. No, come on now. Although it still sells for like $8 or $10 online because it's just so bad that people just have to try it and see it for themselves. And I was one of those suckers that ordered it on eBay and had to see for myself how bad this was. And oh my god, it is horrible! Don't ever play this, ever! Alright, but in all seriousness, my number one game for the Nintendo 64 is Goldeneye 007. Now, not much really needs to be said for this because it's well known for being the definitive multiplayer shooter that gave birth to an entire genre of games, still one of the most popular genres today. And it's all because of this. And you can't argue that. This game was so great and still holds up today. I love to pop this in and just play it every once in a while and just remember what it used to be like. It's a little rough around the edges with some serious slowdown, especially during 4-player action, but man, nothing beats it. Although I do have this game to blame for my inverted controls, so screw you, GoldenEye. Anyways, those are my top 10 games ever created for the Nintendo 64, and I'm sure your top 10 list varies quite widely from what I just had there, but I'd love to hear it. Why don't you list your top 10 in the comments? I'd love to see what you have and how much it varies from what I had. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one. Hey guys, it's me. Hope you didn't miss me too much. Know it's been a little while. Anyways, if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button on top of me there, and check out my other game-related videos to the side here. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.